Yeah, I mean, Avidity had to play 2 matches last week. Lost one, won the second one convincingly. Nightmare had a very light week, just 1 match against Amplify, and I don't think there is too much to take away. So a little less tape on them in the current quote-unquote meta. What are we making of that? Please, guys, run us through this upcoming match.
Yeah, thank you, Sai. Again, that's the off week for me. We sort of talk about it. Each team, obviously, there are 7 games to play, so it's 2, 2, and 1. And it turns out that, yeah, their 1 game was against the weakest team in OWCS. So Nightmare have had some time to survey the landscape going forward here and continue to sort of work on some of their comps. Obviously, Matt, a number of the things that we've enjoyed from the Nightmare side of things, is a lot of those original players that have remained on the roster. I think that, I'm trying not to glaze Lethal too much, but obviously...
That's sick player though.
Addition. Yeah, Zera on the Genji though, when he's been able to get it, incredible. Zera though has demonstrated that even banning the Genji doesn't really shut them down. Far is great. This team did play a little bit of Sombra at times against Amplify, and we're also even seeing it here. So curious to see if that's the way it rolls out. UV is incredible. Was crowned our MVP for their game against Amplify as well. Just very, very impactful. Ana play, I want to say. We'll got to see it.
Yeah, Nightmare actually goes with a ball ban here early on, right? So we talk about like when to kind of save these different types of bans, right? If you feel like the ball is going to be really impactful, they decided to get it out in game number 1. And interesting because you saw, like how you mentioned, your Nightmare play some different stuff last week. It's actually Avidity getting rid of the Sojourn, which like WUB is actually really good on, right? So you get rid of that Sojourn, remove that from the pool. So you take it out of Lethal's hands, and maybe you feel like you have a little bit more of a even matchup, right? When you play that Torb.
I do think that Sojourn can definitely be a bit of a nuisance for Torb's turrets when they're not placed in parts of the map that are inaccessible normally. So WUB, yeah, who's someone who wants to play that, clearly doesn't want to deal with it. Remember, you also might be hedging against comps on certain parts of Nepal, not just, the entire map. So, for example, like, is Ball a Sanctum pick all the time? Maybe no. Either way, the turret has gone down. Lethal was able to hack into it and inject a virus. Payload, though, does get a Suzu briefly. Kuffer had drawn a bead on WUB briefly, now a Nemesis form as he's knocked off course by the Javelin. Ramatra doesn't always want to be displaced like that, but it's been able to create a lot of space alongside the burrowed Zera. And yet another WUB turret has been neutralized quite early. You can see the focus there for Nightmare, really cutting down that Torb's effectiveness.
Well, because there's lots of survivability on the side of Avidity, right? If you allow that Torb turret to just kind of free fire, the Torb's pretty sturdy, obviously Arisa and then Tracer as well. So they do focus down Pella there, Zero and 2 other players in the feed. But otherwise, this team is pretty sturdy. They could last for a while if you don't get rid of this Torb turret and just kind of poke you down over time.
Nightmare's done okay here. They're actually, though, going to commit in a 3v4 as far as I can tell. This orbital ray. Zera is obviously someone who can make great use of it and is able to burrow away from the pulse bomb. But here's a sound barrier now coming back from Avidity. Admiral reciprocates. It's only for 3, though. Kuffer with the speed boost of the Nemesis form, though, was going to get back into the fight pretty darn quickly. The Nightmare just trying to stretch this cap progress out as long as possible. Finally, shoved off the point. But they've gained a healthy 55%.
And Nightmare is going to come back here, Mitch, with their EMP, right? EMP plus Annihilation, a really awesome combo. Nothing on the other side in terms of support ults to kind of get through that. So even though you give the point up for Nightmare, like you mentioned, they extend their percentage as long as possible. And then also now they come back with, 2 really impactful ultimates, right? If you can get through this next fight of Nightmare, like maybe just using the EMP, right? And saving that Annihilation, you're in a great spot moving forward.
Oh, no, good use of the tech shock here, tearing strips off Pella, who again tries to Terra Surge on a Venture. They just I thought that was the plan. Mistime, or maybe Zera forced to emerge either way, but the Annihilation is now in play. Kuffer needs that UV healing, getting some of it, but Pella's a nuisance, a real bully in the front line.
I mean, they ended up using all 3 of those ultimates that I was talking about into this fight, and they don't end up winning it. They're going to end up giving Avidity the lead. They got Pella so low, but Pella's actually able to get like that second fortify, right, by using the Terror Surge. Probably does not expect he's going to kill Zera as he pops up, I know, out of the dig, but man, that is a big blunder there from Nightmare. That's a fight they most certainly should have won, as now Lethal moving away from Sombra, going to go on to Ash for a little bit more consistent damage.
Yeah, without the Sojourn available, this is the plan. Zera somehow just hoovering up the bomb and getting stuck with it by Zomba up on that high ground. Lethal, obviously, a little uncomfortable for Ash to deal with Tracer at the best of times. And I'm trying to give themselves a leg up here, but after losing that fight out, they definitely feel a little deflated. They don't have an advantage against the Arisa in the front line. They don't have anything that strictly shuts her down. I can see they were hoping the Sombra would get them there, but it just wasn't enough front-loaded damage.
And Avidity's pushed so far up here, Mitch, right? It's going to be Zero getting onto the point, trying to get a touch, but you see everybody else kind of like high trailing it, so they already lose Lethal, and players from Avidity going to be moving back here through the choke.
There is zero chance that this is optimal. Winston and Juno comp against the Torb. But whatever it takes to get Nightmare back onto the point and in a position to fight for this round still. Yeah, desperately, Kappa needs that healing. Playing up close here against that Orisa is not where he wants to be. And good peel for Zera. Under a lot of pressure from Zomba, Ultraviolet able to get the healing where it had to be, but there's just too much for the backline to do here. Admiral run down by Nemwai, so UV on their own doesn't even have the time to charge up those pulsar torpedoes because it just takes too long to get the healing from them. Nightmare really stumbling midway through that round.
And really well played there by Avidity towards the end, right? I know they get the early kill on Lethal, and then they kind of give up the point, right? Nightmare kind of circumvents it and goes and takes it. And then coming back through the choke, they take a lot of damage, but they actually disengage for just a brief period of time, allow Nenway to build up towards that sound barrier. And then they just kind of push him behind that beat in response, right? You know, Kuffa's pretty low on Winston, right? You know, pushing in, trying to control the point a little bit further. So they're able to deal with him rather quickly. And then Admiral not able to build towards the beat in time.
And again, these two teams, by the way, are really quite close together in the standings. Obviously, both are at 2 and 1. But in terms of like rounds won and lost, they're really close. So if it comes to a tiebreaker at the end of the stage between these two, it might end up being very, very close together. There's obviously opportunities to qualify for playoffs are running low. So bear that in mind now as we are, of course, sort of halfway through our group stage. Anyway, Zera, this time's opt to go to the Torbjorn. Nightmare really feel like they need a little bit extra. Zomba actually just treads a little too close to Admiral and gets his head torn off.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest difference, obviously, is the inclusion of, like, the Orisa versus the Sigma, right? The Sigma's going to be able to kind of control this space a little bit further, where Pella's going to have to, you know, use some of his abilities, right, to get past the Sigma shield and, you know, make an impact there. I wouldn't be surprised if Avidity actually even decides to maybe change off of this Orisa. Yeah, so they go with Maga. If you're going to try and get past the Sigma shield and be quite aggressive, the Maga is a way better option, right? You can obviously charge. You can't be, you know, interrupted during the charge at all. And then you just kind of push past that Sigma shield using that. And interesting enough, they also changed both DPS. So the Genji's actually a pretty good swap here. And then they're going to go Cassidy as well.
Okay. I mean, clearly Avidity don't feel like the space is going to be taken and, you know, one's going to get pushed on here. So decent shield press with the Cassidy. Also, you know, just solid damage. Should the hindrance grenade be required, then it is powerful in its own right. And look at this, Avidity want to take the space, but they're playing the Malgacom. They do not want to give Kappa any room to breathe. And this counter swapping a tank for Avidity has really yielded some results.
Well, Pella does exactly what you would have wanted him to do on the Maga, right? Charges right past the Sigma and then doesn't actually move up further, right? Because it just kind of puts a barrier, you know, with Maga's just, you know, beefy body in between, you know, himself and the Sigma. So there's no way they can kind of get any support over towards Kuffa. So you end up losing him there, and that's exactly how you're going to want to play that Maga into the Sigma.
Avidity have gotten the flip now and are starting to build up their own capture progress. Nightmare, yeah, definitely considering a switch up here. I've always wondered, I feel like we're kind of divided on whether we prefer the Malga or Orisa in the front line. Obviously, the latter has a little bit more of that disruption, but it's pretty hard to argue with the Malga charge into your backline and a stomp to knock everyone down.
I mean, it feels like ever since Maga got introduced to the game, right, he seems to be the answer for a lot of things. I mean, you just see right there the stomp damage that comes down and then pushing through with Scuffed and Zamba, you know, on the Genji and Juno respectively. There's nothing you could even do if you're lethal to react there. So you have a wrap around here from Nightmare as they go to the point. So Molten Core here just trying to buy themselves some time.
Yeah, there's not enough coverage over the point for this ultimate, though. There's a pocket, which Admiral's trying to knock Avidity into. The sound barrier, though, bought Avidity enough time to find those safe little areas amidst the Molten Core that it wouldn't really affect them. So Avidity, couple of fights now in a row. Nightmare's switch has not worked out.
You also imagine here, Mitch, that Avidity, you know, if you get everybody back in the fight, you can actually play quite aggressive here with Cage Fight plus Blade, right? Knowing that there's no sound barrier on the other side, where obviously the best place to trap these players would be in this choke, right? You know, it's probably the optimal situation here is see Pella go on in, gonna get a dash. It's actually gonna push all the players back to one side. It's gonna be the Bob there to contest the point.
Pella knows that Lethal is there, but they're just outside of the Cage Fight radius. Fortunate for them, Bob does actually allow the point to flip amidst all of this, and Scut has gone down. Pella realizes they're running out of time. They need to find one or more key kills here Lethal, they would love to add Ultraviolet to that list, but they are going to get back to safety. Geronimo says Pella. Buddy, strap some skills on at least.
Hey, I like that. I might use that one. You know, I need some new moves in my arsenal. I like that one. You know, the little stomp off the side there, all the way down the well.
Always looking for a new way to throw. I respect you.
I'm always looking for new tech. Always looking for some new tech. So they actually don't catch anybody in the cage fight, and they end up using the blade there, right? So now on the retake scenario, let's see, because you see where Avidity's pushing in here. It's actually Nightmare just rotating all the way around, like almost behind them. As they're going to use the blade here, just like a solo blade on the Lethal, so get him out of the fight.
I kind of like this. I mean, amidst that chaos, Lethal also gets brought down by WAP, who normally you'd think would be outranged, but Avidity is so good at closing that exact gap and setting up the Cassidy to be favored in some of those matchups. Now Ultraviolet really know where to go to try to fight back against Somber, and honestly, they're doing a pretty darn good job of it. I back them. Here's an orbital right here for Avidity now. They have lost Wab, who of course had a Deadeye to work with. And then why might have gone over the edge there? It's unclear. Ultraviolet has to quickly take to the skies now and get an orbital ray of their own here. Nightmare flip back at just the right moment. A genuinely very close affair here will take us to a third round of Nepal.
Yeah, and Avidity's only window to win there was when Scuffed ended up using the orbital ray. Both teams were down one player at the time, but Avidity not able to find any kind of kills behind it, right? They don't push in towards a U-shaped bend on the point, and that allows, you know, UV and Nightmare to build up towards his orbital ray, and then they just kind of push on out, clean the floor with Avidity as we go to a third round. Hey, look, we thought this match was going to be close. It's actually, proven to be true so far.
It's been excellent. You know, we've seen Nightmare forced to make a switch. I saw that transition, guys. You're not going to get that past me.
But the little hearts, they've been doing it all day. It's the first time you realize it, man. You're old age is catching up to you.
I retract my statement about not getting it past me then. It's been happening all day. Fair enough.
Yeah, no, that's.
Well, you guys win. I'll take the L here. Oh, that's not where you want to be a Scuffed. Okay, Nightmare off that speed boost, just coming Avidity from a very unexpected axis.
The kill happened so fast that you're probably going to get it back, though, right? And now that you lose Kuffa, it's almost a little bit worse here for Nightmare, right? Because you're going to have some of these players coming off the spot as now Zero and Lethal. I mean, they kind of cleaned up. Yeah, they're fine now, so they're going to be able to take that point. I was going to say that you end up getting like Nenwa and Scuff back in the fight if you don't just kind of like end up falling there, right? You're going to have Kuffa just a little bit late, so they will actually go with a Genji of their own here for Avidity. I think the Genji is really good at kind of getting into the back line and also finishing off these kills, but this time they're actually going with a Ramatra here versus the Maga. So we've actually seen Maga like win out in these head-to-heads, right? Because the Ramatra lose a lot of power when not in Nemesis form.
Yeah, I also think the cover just has an overwhelming preference for the Ramatra map. We've seen it on quite a number of maps, these sort of Brawl Star comps to Nightmare. It also plays really nicely with the orbital ray, just as the Malga does in its own right. And here's okay, buddy, interesting. Scuff tries to get some of those torpedoes off, but Ultraviolet got there first. Great pressure. Nightmare now also finding these bursts of speed to catch Avidity in awkward spots. Now they take high ground. Earlier on, they were pushing them while they're in a choke here. Avidity, this is going to stretch their shot calling. They've got to put a strategy together that involves getting in a good position to start the fight. And
look at that.
That's not one of them. I'll give you the big tip.
Yeah, the Vortex actually kind of splits the players off, right? They don't want to push through that Ramatra Vortex, and it actually splits the players off. They jump down from the high ground, and they engage right away. But Avidity does a nice job, actually, kind of keeping everybody up.
Is Lethal under witness protection? I mean, that is unreal.
Yeah.
The peel so quick there for Nightmare as Pella accosted to Cassidy. Immediately, Kaffa just gets in front like Big Brother, and Pella had nowhere to go.
Man, this has been a bloodbath in favor of Nightmare because now they control high ground yet again. They're doing a nice job of using this Vortex to actually split players off, pushing in behind it, and then now you gotta have both support ultimates. I mean, even for Nightmare, right? You lose this fight, maybe you end up holding on to one of them, come back in the end. Win it there is it's gonna be the orbital ray from UV to kick things off. Oh no beat here.
Yeah, Memoir already out of the picture.
This is end of the game too.
Okay, gotta go for it. Cage fight throwing up here. Fella rather, end up falling. And that's going to be Zero just chasing Combo down towards the end. That was an utter blowout map. I mean, we see Nightmare here big time start to ratchet up the pace. They're still on this Ramatra composition, but it's a map that maybe it lends itself a bit more to him as opposed to maybe Sanctum. That was very good.
Yeah, they looked really good on the Ramatra there towards the end. They did a nice job of using the Ramattra like aggressively, right? Not letting the Mauga kind of push up, take that space. You know, maybe they split a player up, see somebody using that Lucio speed, getting the Ramattra and Nemesis form in the way, and then also getting that kill towards the end, right? And then when it has that sound barrier, most certainly would have happened when that cage fight comes down. It allows Nightmare to end up using both their support ultimates, and then with the time on the clock, I mean, it's an easy win there towards the end.
Yeah, this played out much better for Nightmare, and all it really took was for them to play with a little bit more confidence, it felt. Didn't have to deal with like this weird Orisa situation in the front line. Obviously, the Orisa comp got a lot of value, and I'm not... I see, yeah, I mean, maybe you try and get out of that. I think that's just a timing issue there. But again, you know, trying to play Orisa into this Mauga, looked like, you know, it was a decent start in this round, but this is generally very back and forth, and it really came down to the slimmest of margins. Yeah, obviously this is just a reset here. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But again, I think Orisa and Mauga got a lot of tuning, and there was a while, Matt, where like it was one patch after the other. It was Orisa, then Mauga, then Orisa, based on who got more armor and less health on each of those patches. Seems like they're in a spot where they feel like they both have a decent bit of game here, but I really think it's more than the comp that gave Nightmare that third round blowout.
Well, we also don't see Ball here in game number 1, right? So we'll see kind of once the chaos that he brings into the mix enters the equation. But yeah, they seem a little bit more interchangeable than they did in the past. It seems like both have a clear advantage over like the Sigma, right? Sigma used to be able to like kind of control that space, stay on the ground, right, with like kinetic grasp, and you know, be very difficult to dislodge. It seems like both Orisa and Mauga seem to be pretty good in certain situations, certain maps about doing that.
It's called giving a brawl tank a gap close ability. That's very good against Sigma. Also, if you can get if you knock Sigma down, he's Omega dead. You know, you can burst him down very quickly because he has shield, not armor, first of all, so no mitigation per hit, and also he can't use any of his damage when you're getting cooldowns.
Yeah, but once those perks come in, some of the ones for Sigma are pretty cool. He's got like a levitate, and then one of them's also like you land 5 direct hits, you actually get a big like knockback on like a quick melee, which is like super. It like makes the person kind of like float like they have no gravity, which I think that'll be pretty strong with people trying to dive on in, because I know 5 directs on Sigma is not the hardest thing to do, right?
No, absolutely not. And then the fact that you can essentially like put someone in quasi stasis for even a small amount of time, things change fast in the game of Overwatch. So yes, it's so funny. You probably watched, folks, this one day of broadcast where we have not been able to avoid or resist theory crafting a little bit about the perks that are coming into next week's play. That's right.
Yeah.
They are going to be in OWCS next weekend. We play on the live patch here. So coaches,
I can't wait. I think it's going to be fascinating.
Masters are all working against the clock to make sure they have a good grasp of the new meta, and hopefully we can help you guys as we all get exposed.
You just got to be friends with Reinforced, and then he just tells you everything because he played it all. Suravasa, the next map. So this is a Avidity pick. Curious to see what their ban is, right? Map number 1, their ban was Sojourn, right? So they could ban Ball in theory, right? That's available to them.
Ban Mauga if you want.
I was gonna say the Mauga ban seems like it would be pretty high value, right?
Yeah. You know, I like to. Hopefully, we have a bit of time to discuss the implications, because if you ban the Mauga, I think you might end up. I do think like the Orisa store worked quite well for Avidity. They definitely want to play these like, you know, these kinds of compositions. I don't know where you stand really on the Orisa versus Mauga discussion on a map like this, but none of that happens. I do think that Lethal on the Cassidy is pretty darn good. That does, of course, still leave open like Sojourn, who is incredible, and obviously Ash is an option here. But Nightmare, they want to ban the Lucio. Now, what does this tell you? A second ban, of course.
Yeah, the Lucio being banned is quite fascinating because we really don't see it on Flashpoint, right? Because Lucio seems to be pretty essential here. Where, like, what do you play in the? Do you play like a Kiri with the Juno, right? Do you play like do you want to play like something more dive oriented with like a rig, right? Some different capabilities. I mean, the Juno speed ring is not anywhere comparable to like, let's say, Lucio's speed, but still provides a similar effect, right? I just wouldn't say it's like as mandatory per se. So we will see what they kind of play in the supports, but I definitely think you'll see Juno and potentially Kiri.
I'm convinced that we have seen this in recent memory on like a Flashpoint map, but it is definitely less common. Shikigami banned it against Amplify, I think. But it is interesting because obviously I think the ban of Lucio on this map completely opens up your options. Like, it's one of the most diversifying things that you can do. I mean, Lucio is ubiquitous. It's been incredible over the entirety of Overwatch because, you know, mass speed boost is just ridiculous. But looking at these comps, these are coming from completely different directions. And I would suggest that the Lucio bans have more impact on that than the Cassidy one. It's Brig Juno for Nightmare. The original sort of Juno abusing comp that used Ramatra, at least the shell of it. There's a video here on the ball. That's fascinating.
Right. And Nightmare banned the ball in map number 1. Right, so you see Pella now comes out on the ball. This is going to be in play if Avidity wants it for the rest, and I think this is a big test for Nightmare, right? How do you kind of deal with this? They'll play Sombra Torb with Ramatra here, and you're going to have Admiral on the Brig to kind of try and protect UV in the backline.
So keep an eye out for Lethal here because he has to contend with the Torb and the Kiriko, which is generally a pretty big deal. A couple of kunais and Sombra is back to Lumbridge in the blink of an eye. You've got to be so careful. Obviously, his sleep is also potentially very lethal. Nice fire hit there on towards Scuffed, though. That is going to force them out of the fight, and Wub just got run over. So Nightmare do want to play this like at the fringes with lethal and still run into Avidity with the core of their comp.
I like the pressure that Lethal puts on the backline, though, right? You kind of have like the Torb with the Ramatra and like kind of the supports, like dealing with the shenanigans that the ball can, ball tracer combination can do. And Lethal actually makes a play for both backlines. This is going to be Wub coming off the spawn on the Torb. Little Torb 2K here. So Nightmare pushed up, tried to get some kills, weren't able to.
You have to respect the overload, I think, Matt. And I heard that the fire rate out there from Wub definitely indicating that he popped that ability, able to find 2 kills very quickly. Can Nightmare afford to just straight up ignore this ball? They actually have Sombra and Brig as potential, like, mitigating factors for the disruption of ball.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's very interesting the kind of comp they're bringing in to deal with the ball. It'll be Pellic just kind of swinging here on the point. A long-range pulse bomb there from Zomba does not connect. So I wonder, though, if you're Avidity, right? You try and make a play for this point. You're running right into Lethal's EMP, but it's going to be 0 again with 2 with the Torb. I mean, we have seen some crazy Torb play over the last few weeks. I mean, seems to be a hero that obviously is extremely impactful in just about any comp, which also makes you kind of question a little bit like the Cassidy ban, right? Because the Torb is, like, you'd almost say, like, even if they're both in the game, right? I mean, they serve a little bit different purposes, but, you know, Torb is definitely the stronger of the 2 if you were going to go try and get one out.
It's interesting. I don't suppose, I don't, this is a personal anecdote. I don't tend to feel unfavored in that situation, but Torb is much better at repelling, I think, the dive sort of situation. He lacks some mobility. He makes up for endurability and just an increase in his, fighting power under the effects of that overload. So I think this is really interesting comps. The last fight there, we didn't get a chance to talk to it. We're going to go back a little bit. Scuffed makes the play with the Bionade, and Avidity try and follow up. Zomba goes in to try and go for the backline because Admiral got bioed, but he couldn't get through the shield. Then he tried to pulse bomb, it missed. So Avidity started the fight. They made the right moves, but they just couldn't connect, couldn't convert. And then Nightmare cracked back on them. Now a switch to the Malga, which definitely leaves Ramatra heavily unfavored in a frontline duel only, though.
Yeah, pretty similar to what we saw in Nepal. And then also one thing to point out too for Avidity is how you see the amount of with that nano boost just pumps out. It's an annihilation from Kappa, just barely trying to live, puts himself in a corner.
Kappa looks like he entered a chess boxing tournament against Mike Tyson. He's just like throwing the arms up and trying to stall until he can actually play the board game. That is brutal. Here with the bio now as well. That annihilation really doesn't find much value, but after the fact, Scuffed and Sombra are out of the picture. Pella needs that healing throughput against all these players. So ultimately, Nightmare are able to withstand and outlast Avidity.
Tremendous stuff there from Nightmare, being able to live on through that. I mean, we saw it from Kappa's POV. The amount of damage that's coming out on him is tremendous. And Nightmare uses both support ults to be able to keep him alive, but most certainly needed. Also, something that I was going to mention for Avidity, right? They get rid of the Cassidy. The Cassidy's really effective against the ball, right? So the Cassidy could have been that ban that maybe they thought could, like, even unlock Pella's ball even further. But it seems like they've just been kind of thrown off of it, obviously, by that Torb Sombra combinations, because now they're right over on that Maga.
One taken down, so this Battle of the Sombras won out by Lethal there. I do like the Zomba switch here over towards the Sojourn, but it's normally WAP on that particular hero. Doesn't seem to make too much of a difference, but I would suggest Malga's a little bit easier to farm with the Soj than the Ramatra, and Kappa seems to be pretty happy with this situation. They still got the Sombra Tor, which is a bizarre setup in its own right.
Yeah.
But Kafka is living in that front line and he's dishing it out.
You also don't really have an awesome combination here for Avidity with the cage fight, right? Like, you know, you want to think a cage fight or something along those lines as Wob goes to the sky but gets spotted. So, like,
that's
what do
two.
you use here? Yeah, I mean, that's 2 flash ones straight away. What do you do here with your Avidity kind of with this cage fighting combination, right? You don't really have anything that's going to overwhelm Nightmare.
It gets shut down by EMP, Matt. Lethal just holds EMP until Payload tries a cage fight. That's brutal. Also, Admiral, it's a tweak here. Switching over towards the Ana. Again, you have the ability to sleep, but it's that Bionate on Pelo, whose durability depends on good coverage of that cardiac overdrive. So Nightmare, just a slight adjustment here. They get caught off guard in that last fight, but they are really trying to punish Avidity's picks.
Right, because Avidity not pulling a Kiri, right? So no ability to cleanse that Malga, and you know, Malga, the cardiac overdrive, right? That's where he gets like most of the value from, like the stomp plus the cardiac overdrive. And if he's in that bio, I mean, there's no shot. That's a nice sleep in bio there. It's going to be Lethal who takes out Wob as this may open things up. And that's the cage fight. You don't really get anything. I mean, it's actually Zero dropping down his Molten Core inside of it. So, like we've seen over the last few weeks, right, where a cage fight comes in, the opposing Torb drops the Molten Core. Dude, I mean, it gets from bad to worse. I mean, the point doesn't even unlock. They don't even get control of it early on. So it's Nightmare getting first point control here.
It's not just that. It's that, you know, Pella is clearly waiting for Lethal to EMP so they can get a cage fight off. But they're playing reactively, and the cage fight comes down after Avidity already lost 2 players. I think Nenwai actually goes down a little after it, but they're like trying to get into the cage. They still get gunned down. Nightmare, being the proactive team in that fight, win out. And Molten Core doesn't hurt inside the cage fight, I'll be honest with you. But that's a great start for them. Still, Avidity come back with an EMP of their own, but they still have to trade Somber out. It's a 2 for 2 as it stands. And there's still some healing here for Nightmare. Plenty of it, in fact, in Ultraviolet's Juno. Yeah, Wob lit a lot of that time, and yeah, they're going to go down.
Yeah, I mean, these players are going to drop, and one of the biggest kills here is actually Kappa pushes in there with the Nemesis 4, and they actually deal with Nenwai like almost instantly when he pops that rally, so they really get no value out of the rally. The rally's not even close to connecting with the players on the point because it just gets split off by that Ramatra.
All right, Scuff able to win the airborne battle, but Zero is just a little bit too good. Zomba down, Scuff pick up by the turret. That's obviously the risk of playing the rather floaty Juno, so you can't actually shake off the turret aggro.
Yeah.
And Nightmare take a really convincing Suravasa win. Matt, after map 1, I genuinely thought that we were going to have a bit more of a competitive game.
Same.
But all of a sudden, it seems like Nightmare don't actually have any problems changing their comps in such a way as to completely catch their opponents off guard. And I've got to think that Lucio ban has something to do with it.
I mean, they just completely dominated. And even at the points where Avidity looked like they were going to be able to like take a flashpoint and win it, especially the last one early on, right? They win a fight before the flashpoint even opens. They're not even able to get any percentage. I mean, it's just Nightmare, just asserting their dominance here at map number 2.
Yeah. Honestly, big fan of how that game played out. There were some pretty key switches, and I think like one point I had to catch myself because I'm like, okay, Kaffa's still playing Ramatra here. Feel like that's not a favored matchup whatsoever into the Malga, but it didn't seem to matter because the infrastructure around Kaffa was working beautifully. I mean, Lethal Sombra looked great. Even after Wob switched off to the Sojourn, Lethal was like, no, this is where I want to be right now. You can see the constant hacks going in on the Malga, disrupting his mobility with his charge, and of course denying his ability to heal up, an EMP to shut down the cage fight. Basically everything you could have asked for. This is another team. We have a few teams in NA that are doing this. Clearly have a pocket Sombra that is working for them, and they're very used to integrating it, even under like hero ban conditions.
Even if the cage fight, let's say, doesn't get hit with the EMP, you have the Molten Core to throw inside of it, right? We've seen a lot of times where one team's Maga will cage fight the opposing teams. Torbjorn will use the Molten Core, and it's almost worse to kind of be stuck in there in that cage and not be able to get out. So take a look at the stats. Pretty lopsided coming out of this one.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is definitely confirmed by the eye test is, you know, Avidity started with a Wrecking Ball composition, but there was a Sombra and there was a Brig, and it looked like that was enough, at least for Nightmare, to kind of limit Wrecking Ball's ability to be super disruptive. And there wasn't a ton of follow-up on that either from Avidity's side in moments when some of that disruption was able to occur. So I'm really impressed with this team. After that first map, I genuinely thought we'd be looking at like one of the closest games in NA this weekend, but I'm sorry, Nightmare reminding us that even though they're close in standings to this Avidity team, they are not the same. And
I do wonder if you're Avidity, do you ban like Sombra coming into this? You're like, okay, Like, we really want to play ball. We think ball can work. Do we get rid of the Sombra, right? But then you imagine they just play like Torb cast with Ramatra, right? Like you just kind of go to something like that. It may not be as strong, right? Also pretty map dependent. So we'll see in terms of the map pick how that impacts things. But I think there's a world in which you're Avidity and you get rid of the Sombra going in this.
They might pick like an Esperanza map. We see, I mean, we did it against SSG last week. I want to say they pick Esperanza and they ban the Ana there. I don't know if like you would expect Kuffer to play the Winston. I think like that Ramatra Brawl style like really suits them. So maybe you pick that map in combination with like trying to target a ban at them that sort of neutralizes their effectiveness. But I don't think you can target any more bans at
you ban
DPS.
A Ramatra? So I mean, we rarely, I think
it's a flyer,
it, right? Yeah,
that's a flyer because you can play like Malgorisa here and I think still get good results, like with like a Sojourn Shell as well. She's obviously back on the table. They're also both, you know, I think they're both heroes that are disrupted by Sombra. I actually don't hate the idea of a Sombra ban here. I think that could be good. Maybe you're looking at Juno as well. Like, is she an issue? Do you want to try and set up like a force like a Lucio Kiriko scenario? That might be an option.
Potentially, although I mean, you can play like we've seen obviously when Juno's gone, teams just play like Lucio Kiri in the same type of setups, right? So they seem like obviously Orbital Array is really you could play like Hazard comps, right? It opens up some other things. I mean, it also feels like here whatever Avidity does, there is a bad option for them still left, right, in terms of how things go. So Dorado's the map. This would lend it to be like more of like a Winston based setup. So like, do you see them, I mean, do they try and ban like do you want to play like we see D.Va here as well? Like, this wouldn't necessarily be like a ball type map. We saw teams play it last week, but it's infected. He plays ball basically everywhere. So
anyway,
you know, just kind of write that one off.
All right, I'm curious to see it. We're going to take a quick break while our teams get ready for this next map. I think nature is calling, but it's another opportunity to get you excited and remind you of why you should be looking forward to season 15.
Oh, that's nice.
The lad, Kuffer, of course, obviously representing Australia. Pretty sure a resident though, or chilling out here in the US studying at college. So great to see he is sending his love. Hopefully. Hopefully he'll have a win to at least celebrate today.
I mean, maybe he's trying to get out here early.
That's it. That's right. Yeah, it's dinner for two in a couple hours. So let's get this moving along. Dorado.
I mean, those restaurants fill up tonight. I also charge about 30% extra, but you know, just because
that is that is facts. All right, stay safe out there, folks. I mean, those bills are going to be expensive. All right, so holy
little fast food,
Winston ban.
Do a nice meal tomorrow. Yeah, Okay, so they picked this map into a Winston ban, so that tells you they probably feel really confident in their ball pick. Potentially also, you know, a D.Va is like a failsafe, right? And then for Nightmare on the other side, they actually get rid of the Kiri. So you play Kiri with ball a decent amount, right? You know, Kiri's pretty good in combination with the Wrecking Ball. And they'll actually combo this, like, you know, we see a lot of Brig Ana with like Winston in the mix. So Kuffa will actually end up playing the Hazard here. Struggles a little bit on Dorado, like in terms of like getting like high ground control, right? Like has the leap and, you know, can obviously wall climb, but not the same verticality as per se like a Winston.
Oh, I love this. Okay, it really depends on who the DPS is behind them, right? Salty here probably doesn't get picked if this lift doesn't exist. I want to say it's a little bit hard, of course, to get in positioning. Lethal thinks twice about it. But yeah, having someone to join with Kuffa to really establish that high ground control, I think is crucial. Zero can also dash across the building tops now that he has easy access to this one. But Avidity want to disrupt this at any possible opportunity. They still need to deal with an Ana Brig backline and, of course, the threat of the focusing beam. So it's not a free W out there. Payload also has to wait off that Bionade, rude, to pick up that Mega, and Lethal is constantly trying to mark the ball here. I mean, a full Sticky Bomb connect, you can still kill a ball if you get enough damage off some of those opening shots, but keeping them away seems to be more than enough for Lethal to satisfy him.
Like, if the ball can't disrupt, right, there's really no value to be gotten out of the ball, right? So if you can put some of those sticky shots in, right, just the thread of the focusing beam that comes out from the Echo, extremely good against that Wrecking Ball.
That's why the card has moved up so much, Matt, because Avidity are waiting for Pella to disrupt, to follow up on it, but there is just no disruption that is happening, or at least at irregular intervals. Ultraviolet there takes a flyer opportunity out there on a Bionade and doesn't connect it. Kartho has been inching forward. Eventually, Avidity have to stand and fully stand their ground, and that's not where the ball comp necessarily thrives. And it's also a Nano already built up here for Ultraviolet. This could get ugly. Nano on the Hazard, perhaps? No, on the Echo. Stick, though, going to connect. Ultraviolet down, but Wub traded out basically instantly now as Admiral realizes he needs this rally in the thick of the fight. Popped now, and Zobba has to respect the shield bash. It's going to be a recall away before it comes on in, and Pella is also ready to throw down under the effects of that Nano boost. Able to stand his ground and deal with Kuffer. However, Zomba down and the Bionade connecting over towards the ball makes this a bit scary, and Scuffed is very far forward, ultimately out of position. They're able to make another one with the pulse bomb, and Wub has to try and keep this together. Not where Zera's favored, that's for sure, but there's help on the way. Zera eventually falls, but where's the rest of Nightmare? Can they pressure this down? Healing aplenty in the sky for Lethal though, and that focusing beam will account for the ball.
Yeah, no healing there for Pella. Though drops the minefield, just tries to extend this as long as possible. That's actually going to be a Wub using the Molten Core here, so even more ultimates invested for Avidity, and I wonder if that signifies a switch as you lose some of these players here towards the end. More stagger, so it starts off really well for Nightmare.
A good time to remind you all that two of you can be hit by the jump slash, or multiple people if you're in the hitbox. So Kuffer there got 160 damage off that, which is pretty disgusting.
Yeah, pretty filthy stuff.
And good micro as well to avoid the Molten Core. He's actually able to jump through it back sort of towards the backside of Avidity and really create that space. So
they spell, that's a huge, I mean, you get rally out here. I mean, that is insane value.
It's beyond dangerous though. Good connection with the downpour. I don't know. I'm not sure what the idea is there, who's looking to follow that up. And so if Lethal's close enough, I suppose that's fair enough. But yeah, Kuffer there just comes face to face with his own mortality and the fact that he's not playing Winston, so trying to shield that damage off. There should be Avidity here, establishing some decent defensive high ground setup.
Yeah, Zama's made some really nice plays on the Tracer, just throughout the series, but especially here on Dorado as Admiral gets extremely low, but you're going to have double support ult here for Nightmare, right? So you get Ninwa to use that rally up in the high ground because they don't want to give the high ground straight away to Nightmare. And he's also extremely low, but now this opens up a big window here for Nightmare to get that payload moving.
Kuffer looking past Pella towards the back line of Avidity. Nenway a little on the low side as Zera's able to capitalize. Again, there is plenty to link up with Kuffer. It doesn't have to be the Hazard that secures the kills on his own. Plenty of action here from Nightmare. Lethal also very busy around these fights, and now the duplicate available couldn't be a Wrecking Ball, but Pella gets a Nano. Looking to make use of it. Found Ultraviolet. Defensive Bionade got to be popped here, and a minefield as well, but I love this peel. Admiral grouping up with Ultraviolet. Doesn't even need to use the rally here, so holding on to the... And Pella uses his ult plus gets an honor roll, doesn't turn it into anything. But Lethal's gone down. Avidity still have the edge here. They're definitely taking space and control of this courtyard.
Yeah, the Nano onto the ball just pushes both supports out into that courtyard, and even though the Nano used by UV on the Kuffer, not really able to get much of anything, kind of jumps back to the supports, tries to protect a little bit from that ball yet again, but Lethal potentially actually duped the Ana the last time. I wonder what we see him go for here. So this dupe could be massive, unlock that second checkpoint.
Could be Torb again. You can just pop Overload straight away and I hope to be a difference maker. Again, it's Ana. Extra sleep? Oh, that one is wild, but gotta go for it, I suppose. Lethal now knows he's got an extra 250 health to make use of, so inch the cart forward. Dare someone to come down and fight. You're basically using that health as a resource to get the fight started where you want it to be. And Zera overruns Nenwide. They are just too busy dealing with the Hazard immediately in front of them. And eventually Avidity will have to... Yeah, they'll have to succumb here. I like it from Zomba. Good push up, and the Molten Core damage actually gets good work done on Admiral. But it's all for naught. Second checkpoint here for Nightmare.
I've been really impressed with how Nightmare has dealt with these ball comps because although we haven't seen a lot of teams be able to deal with the ball, especially playing stuff like Hazard into it, right? We've seen the teams that have played the ball really just kind of run over teams who have not played it against them, right? In like a mirror or, tried to play something a little bit different, it's a little slower pace. So Nightmare doing a really nice job here playing around that Hazard who, Hazard doesn't exactly want to play into Torb either, right? So Kuffer doing a great job.
Good fire down towards Kuffer, keeps him alive. Also, yeah, we threw down that downpour. Unclear though. Yeah, just keep him alive. Fair enough. Can he turn this into a kill though? Yep, Wub gets just sliced and diced as he tries to drop to the low ground. Then Why doing what they can to force Kuffer back. Kuffer gonna wrap around though. Easy damage there with that slash, but Scuffed dutifully, handing that healing out, and Kuffer could be in trouble here. Needed that mini. Nice defensive bio there from Ultraviolet. That secures the kill on Nenwai, keeps Kuffer alive. This backline for Nightmare is humming.
Yeah, they actually just used the nano there on Nepal, even though they kind of used that minefield, right? So they desperately wanted to win that fight as Ninwa in the brig tries to get aggressive, but it's Kuffa with a really nice hazard wall and then just kind of traps him in there with his own brig and able to live. This would be a really nice time bank for Nightmare if they're able to get it over the line.
Yeah, I don't think they will in this fight. I think Lethal just demonstrating why you don't often dupe the Tracer, because when you come out of duplicate, you are more likely going to be right in the enemy backline.
Yeah.
And yeah, he did not escape. There was also a Torb turret that clipped him. So, about a minute left here. Nightmare with really only a pulse bomb to hang their hat on and the chance to build into a rally with this next fight. A minute can be a long time with the cart as close as it is. But it all comes down to linking up with Kuffer and the first dive being a successful one. Lethal's over on the Sojourn now, but he doesn't naturally have that high ground. We need to find a way to take it.
No, and I'd also really look at, Zamba has done a great job landing these pulse bombs. And as I say, that kind of throws his in maybe towards the other Tracer, does not connect. So see Nightmare working their way towards that high ground. They want to get Lethal sit up there. That's when the Sojourn can be most impactful.
Zera can't take high ground without recall is the problem. Pops it pretty early. The healing's good. Heal pressure coming down pretty hard from Nightmare, and Wub's turret eventually goes down. It's the Torb flank. Oh my goodness, Wub has been spotted out, but it doesn't seem to matter. Lethal brought down with one of those rivets, but traded out for Scuff might favor Nightmare. Here's a Molten Core over the cart, making it a little bit awkward, but there's a rally in play for Admiral, and Nightmare just go forward. They realize Torb is not doing his job defending the backline, so they instead step up and take those easy support kills. Zomba slept by Ultraviolet, just a moment of mastery from the very experienced Ana player. And I think the idea to flank on Torb probably doesn't pay off.
They get it into OT. I mean, look, he comes up with some kills.
He gets a kill. Right. He gets a kill. But at what cost? At what cost?
Yeah, I mean, the cost potentially a little bit high there, but I mean, they needed to make a play. I also think Torb, with the turret on a little bit of a flank there, there's a lot of damage output potentially. You got the Molten Core over the point. They had Nano plus Rally, right? You're able to kind of like survive on through it. So nothing you can really do there if you're Wub, but at least you got them into OT.
Of course, this being a pure escort map, it matters a lot less than this were this a hybrid one.
Yeah.
So whichever way you slice it, Avidity, if they finish with under a minute, it'll be a time extension either way. I mean, though, I thought like they handled that first point of the map pretty well. Avidity gave a lot of space. I want to sort of draw back to us noticing that because Pella isn't able to dive as frequently, because they're quite low, because the Echo's harassing them down, Avidity are just giving up space, waiting for there to be a good engagement that they can actually work with.
Well, let's also see if Pella and Co can actually like force them off of the high ground as well, right? That'll be the most impactful thing here. Can the ball dislodge, the Ash Brig Ana combination off of that high ground? If you can, you're going to be successful with this ball comp. If not, it's going to get quite ugly.
Stop the payload.
So towards that high ground will be assumed. Kuffer can, climb up to some degree and get back on top of these buildings should they ever drop down. So, similar way to Winston's cycling, maybe less easily. Kuffer is able to drop down and get back up there. So Dorado taken down. And that's Zera going in, just clearing out Wubs. Ooh, buddy, that's scary for Zomba.
So nasty.
Pella's dead. How does that happen so early?
The wall of Hazard has like that kind of like a little bit of like a knockback and like damage like that. I think a lot of times like it shoots out so fast. It's like almost jarring how fast it kind of comes out. And you can definitely, that's a few times where Cup has caught a player off guard and they're not able to back up, not able to get out, and you don't want to be caught. The Hazard primary fire can do lots of damage. There's a nice bio there from the low ground to the high ground from Scuffed, and that results in the kill on Lethal.
Yeah, nice connection. There was a good sleep from Ultraviolet, but there's just far too much there to help it. Kuffer is able to get in, get rid of Scuffed. Wub another turret removed. Kuffer really focusing on that now if there's going to be a longer fight here. But Nightmare are lacking their Tracer and their Ana, who's still on the, on their... Ash is still on the walk back to the fight. Lethal actually switched over to the Sombra, presumably to get there a little earlier. Kuffer struggling with the Lucio. Nenwai trying to solo him. Questionable as Ultraviolet sent like one dart of healing down. It was enough to keep the Hazard alive, and maybe a little bit of an overstep there by Avidity's Lucio.
I like this from Nightmare as well, Mitch. They're actually going back to the Sombra. I was like, you know what? Like, I was actually going to mention, you know, on the last half, right? Like, if it doesn't exactly work with, like, whether it's, you know, the Echo or whatnot, you know that the Sombra has been effective. And Lethal's been really good on it throughout the series. And that is a very strong option for them, especially now, right? Hey, if they want to make a play, whether it be Zombie or Pella for the high ground, and just leave everybody else vulnerable to the, you know, Hazard, Tracer, Sombra combo, I think you take your chances and odds there if you're Nightmare.
Pella here just wants to draw people out of position. Get someone to come down and contest the card. Now, though, that's much less of... Oh, buddy, Sarah, please. I was going to say it's much less of an attractive proposition with the minefield in play. Nightmare use this window, though, to go and dive the backline of Avidity. Now, if they can return to the fight here and really punish the fact that there's no Ana healing now and no Nano available, they've done that perfectly with a hack on Pella and no healing, or not enough at least from Nenwai, no chance for them to use a sound barrier. There's so many tools here for Avidity to deal with this disruption, but they don't seem to have access to it in that fight.
But what Nightmare does there is they actually nano cover, and then they're basically like, hey, you're on your own, bud. And he goes in there, kills Scuffed, and then both supports, because they've already lost the Tracer, right? Double back to the point, and they're the ones that get on and contest, and you have to end up using the rally there. But you're below a minute on the clock for Nightmare, and you have an EMP. So even using these support ults, you feel like you're going to get an immense value out of this EMP, potentially another fight win just off of this.
Oh, he's committed to this, Lethal. Doesn't quite connect the virus, though. Kaffa deals with Pella, so no Wrecking Ball. I do think that's probably a win for you. Sombra's the facilitator, not necessarily the closer. Nano therefore, Zomba really just for survivability, but the looks of things largely being ignored here by UV, as Admiral as being the one that's being called to accost the Tracer, and the backline of Nightmare still lives. However, Kaffa couldn't benefit from their healing while they were being tied up and will fall, and then the rest of Avidity can abuse that numbers advantage.
I was going to say, though, it was a really tremendous job by Admiral to keep UV up, right? I mean, that's a Nano Tracer right in the Ana's face. Obviously, UV able to do some nice things to the bio for himself, but it's really that protection of the Brig that keeps Ultraviolet alive for a bit longer. So now Avidity will actually match with a Hazard of their own. I wonder if this actually gets Nightmare. I wonder if you're Lethal, like, do you consider going something that's, whether it be like Torb or a little bit more long range, right? The Torb definitely gives Hazard some trouble. Potentially, you don't need the Sombra here in this instance.
Yep. I think that might be true. There's definitely a feeling that while Hazard wants his cooldowns very much, he can tend to withstand that period of being hacked and turned off. And then again, yeah, just caught out. Kaffa goes for that dive in, slept in the backline and bioed, so we'll be taking a Molten Core. Wow, okay. Someone put the electric blanket on for Kaffa, clearly. Zero of those able to run roughshod over the backline of Avidity. And Nightmare will be able to solidify their hold here and perhaps consider switch to some hit scan to really abuse the high ground.
Yeah, and Pella was one shot, so he has to back all the way up as the Molten Core doesn't really get much of anything there, right? Downpour used there by Kaffa, so you don't have that huge ultimate, but they're actually off of the Lucio now for Avidity, so Nenwai over to the Brig. We've seen actually Kaffa be able to pick up the supports rather easily on the other side, so the Brig probably a better response here, going to be able to keep Nenwai scuffed up.
Down here for Kaffa. Controlling that high ground pretty well. The Bionate from Ultraviolet, though, doesn't hurt either. Nenwai might be a juicy snack here, and yep, dangerous. That shield just crumbled.
To the rally.
Kaffa needs some backup.
Onto the Brig, yeah.
Can jump out here, but yeah, Nano Brig, the raid boss. A little bit of an unexpected turn of events there for Nightmare. Though we're down to 1 minute and 10 seconds. Pella doesn't really have a great opportunity to ult here and may never have the chance to just get away out of the effects of that bio, and they really don't want to give up this stairwell. So even at like 40 health, they stay there. But the cart's moving up. Now they're going to deal with an EMP rally.
Yeah, now you have to use that Nano there off the start. That's going to be an EMP there from Lethal to kick things off.
Big bio.
Players hit by it.
Lethal have to get out of the downpour, but has to deal with Somba. Not a fight you always want to take, but does force the recall, at least with the virus. Elsewhere, though, things bode so much better for Nightmare. The backline of Avidity were caught on the cart and EMP'd, hit by a Bionade from Ultraviolet, and eventually they just fall apart.
Yeah, and the EMP is good. Connects with 3 players, but 3 extremely high impact targets. With Pella, Wub, and Scuffed, as they actually know that this one player's behind. So Zero on the hunt here. It's
very dangerous. Trying
to hunt down Zomba. Yeah, I mean, this is a huge kill if he can get it.
Can they get out? They might just try and fight Zero, but Zero has the later recall. They are going to leave Zomba to their own devices in the backline. Who is going to check them? So this might turn us into a 4 versus 4 now, as our UV just playing up on this high ground here. Lethal control in that space as well. Zero, though, has a pulse bomb that would be better used, I think, in this fight than on Zomba, for obvious reasons. UV sees this coming. Can he hold his cooldowns? He dodges away from the blaster when Zomba's pulse does not connect. Now, though, Kaffa getting pretty close to a downpour, but needs to stay alive on his high ground. He does. Rally, though, is in play right now for Nenwai. The Nightmare have got to respect it. Lethal with a hack. Won't be turning off the rally, though. All of Avidity trying to look to that high ground and get rid of Admiral and UV, respectively. The Molten Core claims the Brig. Zera has to make something happen amidst this. Pulse Bomb doesn't quite connect, though. Wub is able to stay alive, and Zera's not favored in that matchup. Kaffa's nanoed. Can he even get Nenwai? Yes, finally Zera gets into the fight, and the high ground's being controlled by Lethal here. Stall on the carpet. Pella steps forward and says, no, we have more map to play.
Yeah, and that's what Nightmare was playing around. They actually were kind of just letting Avidity, use their nano, use their rally there by the point. And what Nightmare was playing around was having that nano there for Kaffa to be able to use the kind of contest, right? If you're able to trade a kill out in that point, you have the spawn advantage, and you can win it out there. Interesting enough, though, Nightmare actually changes. So they'll go Genji with a Juno. So they drop the Ana, going to be playing around, potentially getting an orbital ray at the end.
Okay, here's the downpour. The catch is pretty unconvincing. Kaffa bio there as well, and God, nice techers. Able to mantle onto the bridge and get away. Ultraviolet does not want to cross that gap, though. He's got to be elsewhere, apparently. How is Admiral down there? Missed shield bash, perhaps? I'm not sure what happened.
I mean, maybe that is not the spot that he wants to be in, though, is potentially that is a huge swing here as Avidity kind of closes the gap towards the end. And now UV, he's going to get caught out. This is horrible, man.
Oh, my goodness!
No
Ochako, my girl. That's why she got a whole episode to herself, folks. Ultraviolet does go down, so it ends up being a trade, but there's a rally here for Admiral and an EMP. There has to be a regroup here for Avidity, at least for a moment. On the high ground, and Lethal is lying in wait. The rattiest EMP spot. He says, let's get rid of Wub straight away. Able to dodge out of that downpour. Admiral not so lucky, but has a rally at least to deal with the follow-up damage, but not the pulse bomb. That is going to take down the rallying Brig, but unfortunately for Avidity, the rest of Nightmare are moving in numbers, moving in force, and leaving Pella essentially stranded on that high ground to eventually succumb, cold, broken, and alone. It's going to be Nightmare here to take away the series with a very entertaining finish on Dorado.
Yeah, I mean, some really awesome Sombra play, I think, from Lethal throughout the series, where they wanted to run Pella on the ball a decent amount of times, but Lethal and the Sombra just made a huge difference. Perfectly timed EMPs, right? You're not getting like these massive, 4 or 5 players EMPs anymore, right? Being able to get like 2 targets, or even right there, the one at the end, and get rid of Wub. I mean, that's extremely, good value there. So, Nightmare, make a statement. We're just cursed. We say Rad Esports looks like they can make it into the top 4, then they end up getting blown out. Now we did the same thing to Avidity here today.
Yeah, it seems like it's a you problem, Matt. I don't know. But quite frankly, Nepal, mostly a close affair.
Nah, I'm good.
It's like, no, I'm really just, yeah. No, but seriously though, like the beginning of this series, Nepal, it was a close affair. I very much hope that that's the trajectory for the rest of this match. That was not the case. Exhibit B, Suravasa, that was rough. I mean, looks like the Nightmare Lucia band there definitely worked its magic. But yeah, man, Nightmare look good.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of really nice flexibility from Kaffa. I think especially displayed here in map number 1, right? Being able to play, like Orisa, Ramatra, Sigma, a lot of different tanks. I think that also, his flexibility in terms of the tank role plus Lethal, I think definitely was a bit of a story here.
I quite like that there's no consensus about what the best backline is when Lucia was banned on Suravasa. I think that made that quite a fun map. But, in days gone by, you counter Wrecking Ball comps by just diving a little bit better with them with a Winston shell. But I think in the era of Torbjorn, that's not really viable. So teams have to find out other ways to work around it. And Pella was definitely neutralized very much at the start of this map, right? When they were on defense, Pella was not able to get good dives, and they were eventually forced onto a bit of a hazard mirror. I think Kaffa looked really good there, someone who we know is preferred to play more of those brawl style setups, but they did a great job with his comp. Obviously, Lethal's EMPs were pretty important. The good follow-up, of course, from Ultraviolet. I think when you have a player like UV on your team, you definitely want to set up situations where like Ana can be played, and like maps like Dorado, when you see someone like Nightmare pick that, you're like rubbing your hands together. I think it's such a great chance to show some of the strengths of your roster.
My internet just died, or it didn't?
Are you good?
Am I
You
back?
good?
No.
I'm good. Okay, it just froze for me. So
No, if Matt's face froze, it's just what he does.
I was waiting
He's
for
just surprised.
talking
He's just so
about
surprised.
Lethal with the player of the match.
That's right. That's what I just did. Yeah, Lethal.
Yeah, no, I
what
mean,
a player of this match.
maybe you froze, but no, I mean, Lethal was awesome. I know the Sombra EMPs, like we talked about. We typically see him play a lot of like hit scan, right? We didn't really see a lot of that today. There was like a Cassidy ban, Sojourn ban, right? So some different stuff that kind of took them out of the pool. But also, really for Nightmare, they don't play it like any ball, right? We saw them play no ball really at all today. So when you're not going to play that Wrecking Ball, you got to come up with different ways to kind of counteract that. And the Sombra definitely seems to be impactful. So really kind of built around his gameplay.
Absolutely. And we actually do have our player of the match joining us for a quick post-match chat. So please, everyone, welcome Lethal to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time after that dub to join us for a few words. It's audio only, but you can hear us?
Yeah, hello guys.
Yo.
Perfect. Great to hear from you, Lethal. Let's talk a little bit about the Sombra we got to see from you. Obviously, you had a very light week last week, just one match. It was a quick one too, so we weren't really sure what you guys cooked up for this week, if you took any inspiration from what all the other teams have played, since quite frankly, the meta is kind of all over the place. What's your usage case for Sombra? How does she fit into the current meta? How viable is she?
She's just very fun, and the sound she makes when she shoots hack targets is really nice as well. So I'm just like enjoying it. That's the only reason, to be honest.
Sounds and fun.
Immersion.
So based, honestly. Last year, Lethal, you were obviously on this roster, but not necessarily, being used in every game. And I wouldn't necessarily call you on the core of the roster. You chilled, you joked around a bunch, you had a good time. This year, though, it feels like Nightmare are relying on you a lot more, and you're absolutely like part of the engine room of this team. What's the transition been like for you, who has been a professional Overwatch player for quite a long time now, from last year to this year now, seeming much more involved in this roster?
Last year I wanted to put more time into my studies, and I could just, chill on the bench, and if they ever need me for anything, I can show up. But then they asked me to lock in this year, and I was like, okay, I guess. And I still put some time for my studies, but I'm still able to, perform at this level if I need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, studies are important. I tell Mitch that all the time, but he refuses to listen. But you guys don't play.
Where's your degree, bro?
You guys don't really play any of the ball compared to some of the other teams. Do you still feel like the hazard comps can end up winning out against the ball pretty consistently? We've seen a lot of teams move away from them as well.
Yeah, we don't really ball. Ball's like a band-aid fix, to be honest, most cases. So we just decide to work on like what we can actually improve on. And maybe, a little bit of the perk system where we're trying to work towards heroes that are good on category. So I don't think
What is it a band-aid fix for?
I'd say just disconnection between like, frontline, backline from certain teams maybe. Or, they don't know how to play other comps like with Hazard or with Sigma or Ram, so they decide to play ball because it's more, deathmatchy. And it's very easy to do the jobs with ball over at any other tank, in my opinion.
Yeah, those hazard comms and whatnot, they do require a lot of coordination and comms. So yeah, if it's not there, you just ball out and potentially win a match or two. For now, though, you guys came out on top. I'm very excited to see you in action next week again when we see perks in the mix. Any thoughts? Are you excited for that? Worried, concerned, or just vibing?
I think it's pretty positive. It's going to be a lot more fun, I think. Way more fun, actually.
And you are all about fun and vibes. So we are excited to see you back in action. Lethal, thank you so much for joining us. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you for having me, guys. Have a good day.